They sold you a postcard, but they didn't show you the receipt. The shadow fact that no one mentions at immigration seminars is that Canada isn't a land of wealth. It's a land of wealth preservation for those who already have it. For the newcomer or the young professional, it is a high-cost service economy masquerading as a land of opportunity. You arrive with dreams of a detached home in a quiet suburb, but the reality is a 500-square-foot glass box in the sky that costs 60% of your take-home pay. The curiosity gap here is simple. Why do we keep coming? Why do we stay? We stay because of a psychological phenomenon known as the gilded cage. We are told we are lucky to be here, and that gratitude acts as a silencer for the financial trauma we experience every time we tap our cards at the grocery store. But tonight, we're peeling back the polite exterior. We're looking at the raw, visceral pain of the disappearing middle class. You feel it, don't you? That nagging sensation that no matter how many hours you put in, the finish line keeps moving. This isn't just bad luck, it's a systemic design. And by the end of this, you'll understand the one thing they don't want you to know about the Canadian economy.
Let's talk about the visceral pain of the weekly grocery run. You walk into a Loblaws or a Sobeys and you see it. A single bag of grapes for $8, a block of cheese for $12. You're not just buying food, you're paying for the massive overhead of a Canadian retail oligopoly. The emotional toll of looking at a $150 receipt for 3 bags of essentials is a unique kind of Canadian stress. It's the feeling of being squeezed by a giant that knows you have nowhere else to go. We talk about inflation as a global phenomenon, but in Canada, it feels personal. It's the realization that your labor is being devalued in real time. You work an hour just to afford a pound of butter and some bread. This is the first crack in the dream. When the basic necessity of caloric intake becomes a line item you have to budget for with surgical precision, the concept of getting rich becomes a cruel joke. It's about survival now. But the grocery store is just the tip of the iceberg. The real drain is happening somewhere you can't see, behind the closed doors of the Bank of Canada, where interest rates are the silent executioners of your disposable income. Do you know how much of your paycheck is actually yours?
The 40-hour workweek was designed for a world that no longer exists in Canada. In the 1980s, a single income could support a family, a mortgage, and a yearly vacation to the Maritimes. Today, that same 40 hours barely covers the interest on your debt. There is a deep psychological exhaustion that comes from working a high-skilled job and still feeling like you're one car repair away from insolvency. This is the visceral pain of the new poor. You have the degree, you have the title, and you have the LinkedIn profile that says you're successful, but your bank account tells a story of quiet desperation. You're trading your youth and your mental health for a currency that is being diluted by the minute. The curiosity gap widens when you realize that Canada's GDP is increasingly tied to housing rather than innovation. We aren't building things, we are just swapping houses at higher and higher prices. This creates a society where the only way to win is to have entered the market 20 years ago. If you're just starting now, the game is rigged. But wait, it's not just the cost of things, it's what is being taken from you before you even see it. Let's talk about the CRA and the tax bite that leaves you bleeding. The Canada Revenue Agency is a silent partner in every one of your successes, but they don't share in your failures. In Canada, the middle class is the primary source of fuel for the government machine. You work from January to June just to pay your tax bill. By the time the CRA takes their cut, and you factor in the hidden taxes, carbon tax, sales tax, property tax, you are left with a fraction of your gross income. The emotional pain stems from the lack of reciprocity. You pay into a system for free healthcare, yet you wait 12 hours in an ER or 3 years for a family doctor. This disconnect between the cost of the system and the quality of the service is a psychological burden that weighs on every Canadian. You feel like you're being overcharged for a product that doesn't work. The shadow fact here is that the tax brackets haven't kept pace with the reality of inflation. You might get a raise, but that raise pushes you into a higher bracket, leaving you with less purchasing power than before. It's a treadmill designed to keep you exactly where you are. But why is the housing market the ultimate barrier? Why is the GTA rent crisis more than just an inconvenience? It's a total erasure of the future. If you live in the Greater Toronto Area or Metro Vancouver, you aren't paying rent, you're paying a ransom.
The cost of shelter has become the single greatest destroyer of Canadian wealth. We are seeing a generation of forever renters who are essentially funding the retirements of their landlords. The visceral pain of seeing $2,800 leave your account on the first of every month for a one-bedroom apartment is soul-crushing. It prevents you from investing, from starting a business, or from starting a family. The curiosity gap is this: how can a country with so much land have the most expensive housing in the world? The answer lies in a toxic cocktail of zoning laws, massive immigration targets, and speculative investment. We have commodified the very roof over our heads. This creates a landed gentry class and a serf class. If you don't have parents who can gift you a $200,000 down payment, you are effectively locked out of the primary wealth-building vehicle in Canadian history. You are running a race where the other participants started 5 miles ahead of you. But what happens when the interest rates rise? What happens to those who manage to buy in? The mortgage cliff is coming, and it's going to be a dark awakening for the house poor.
The Bank of Canada interest rate hikes were a blunt instrument used to fight a fire they helped start. For thousands of Canadians who bought at the peak of the market, the mortgage cliff isn't just a financial term, it's an existential threat. Imagine your monthly payment jumping by $1,500 overnight. That's not just tightening the belt, that's the end of your discretionary spending, your children's extracurriculars, and your peace of mind. The emotional pain of house poverty is a quiet, shameful struggle. You live in $1 million home, but you can't afford to go out for dinner. You are a millionaire on paper and a pauper in practice. This is the dark psychology of the Canadian real estate trap. You are tethered to a debt that requires 25 to 30 years of perfect health and steady employment to service. One slip, one layoff, and the bank takes the keys. The curiosity gap here is, why do we value home ownership so much that we're willing to sacrifice our entire lives for it? Because the system has made every other form of saving, like the TFSA or RRSP, feel like a drop in the bucket compared to the gain from a detached house. But those gains are only realized if you sell and leave. And where would you go? Let's talk about the healthcare myth. Canadians are taught from birth that our healthcare system is our greatest achievement. But the visceral reality in 2024 is a system on the brink of collapse. You pay some of the highest taxes in the world, yet you can't find a family doctor. You wait months for an MRI while your condition worsens. The emotional pain of seeing a loved one suffer in a hallway of an overcrowded hospital is a betrayal of the social contract. You were told that in exchange for your high taxes, you would be taken care of. The shadow fact is that Canada's healthcare spending per capita is high, but the outcomes are lagging behind almost every other developed nation. This is a hidden cost of living. When you can't get timely care, you lose workdays, you lose health, and sometimes you lose everything. It forces a terrifying question. If the state can't provide the one thing it promised in exchange for your wealth, what exactly are you paying for? The psychological impact of this service deficit creates a sense of abandonment. You're on your own, despite being part of a collectivist society. And this isolation is amplified by the sheer cost of staying connected in this country. The TFSA and RRSP are often touted as the keys to wealth, but for the average Canadian, they are more like small bandages on a gaping wound. The contribution limits are dwarfed by the cost of living. Even if you max out your TFSA every year, it won't buy you a house in the GTA. It might not even cover a year of rent in retirement. The curiosity gap is the investment trap. We are told to save, but the inflation rate on assets like housing and food far outpaces the returns on a safe investment portfolio. To actually get ahead, you have to take massive risks. But when you're already living paycheck to paycheck, risk is a luxury you can't afford. This creates a cycle of perpetual stagnation. You're doing everything right, saving 10%, investing in index funds, but you're still falling behind the curve. The emotional pain of following the rules and still losing is what drives the brain drain. Why stay in a system that caps your upside while maximizing your downside? This is why our best and brightest are looking south. The shadow fact is that the Canadian tax system is designed to tax income, not wealth. If you work for a living, you are the target. If you own for a living, you are the guest of honor. Walk into any Uber or taxi in Toronto, and you might find a doctor, an engineer, or a scientist behind the wheel. This is the professional underemployment crisis. Canada is excellent at attracting high-skill immigrants, but terrible at integrating them.
The visceral pain of having your credentials ignored while you work a minimum wage job is a tragedy of wasted human potential. These individuals were promised a life of prosperity, but they were met with Canadian experience requirements that act as a barrier to entry. The curiosity gap is, why do we keep bringing in thousands of professionals if we won't let them work in their fields? The answer is that the Canadian economy needs a constant influx of new consumers to prop up the real estate market and the service industry. It's a demographic play, not a talent play. This creates a psychological rift. You've moved across the world for a better life, only to find yourself in a different kind of struggle, one where your status is erased and your future is mortgaged. The dream is a bait and switch. You aren't here to be a doctor. You're here to be a tenant, and the rent is due.
Canada has a debt problem that we don't like to talk about at dinner parties. We have the highest household debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We are a nation built on a foundation of credit cards, lines of credit, and buy now, pay later schemes. The emotional pain of polite debt is that it's invisible. Everyone looks like they're doing well. They drive the new SUVs, they have the latest iPhones, and they live in the renovated homes. But it's all owned by the big five banks. The shadow fact is that the average Canadian is $1.80 in debt for every dollar they earn. We are living on borrowed time and borrowed money. This creates a culture of extreme fragility. We are one interest rate hike away from a total collapse of the household budget. The curiosity gap is, how did we get so comfortable with being owned? We were conditioned to believe that debt is just a tool, but for most, it's a leash. It keeps you in a job you hate in a city you can't afford because you have no choice. The freedom to walk away is the one thing no one in Canada seems to have anymore, and the banks are the ones holding the keys to the kingdom. Why is your phone bill so high? Why is your internet so expensive? Because in Canada, competition is a myth. We live in a land of telecom monopolies. A few giant companies control the airwaves, and they charge Canadians some of the highest rates in the developed world. This isn't just an annoyance, it's a tax on existence. In a modern economy, you need the internet and a phone to survive, to work, to connect. The visceral pain is the realization that you are being overcharged simply because there is no alternative. This lack of competition extends to the airlines, the banks, and the grocery stores. The curiosity gap is, why doesn't the government stop this? The shadow fact is that these monopolies are deeply intertwined with the Canadian pension funds and the economy at large. To break them up would be to hurt the very investments that many Canadians rely on. We are trapped in a circular system where we are overcharged as consumers to support our own retirements as investors. It's a parasitic relationship that drains your daily cash flow. It's another reason why the path to becoming truly rich in Canada is blocked by 1,000 small fees and overcharges that bleed you dry before you can ever build momentum. Winter in Canada is more than just a season. It's a financial season of attrition. The winter tax is real. From the skyrocketing costs of heating a home in -30 degrees to the necessity of winter tires, salt-corroded vehicles, and expensive cold weather gear, the cost of simply staying warm is immense. The emotional pain is the seasonal depression that comes when you realize you are working just to pay for the utilities that keep you from freezing. The curiosity gap here is, why do we live in a climate that actively tries to kill us and our bank accounts? The shadow fact is that the Canadian infrastructure is incredibly expensive to maintain, and those costs are passed directly to you. Your property taxes, your utility bills, and your insurance premiums are all inflated by the harsh reality of our geography. While someone in a warmer climate can save that money or invest it, a Canadian must spend it on survival. It's a hidden drain on your wealth-building potential. Over 40 years, the winter tax adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost opportunity. You aren't just fighting the economy, you're fighting the elements, and the elements always win. It's a cold, hard truth that no one puts in the brochure. The middle class in Canada isn't just shrinking, it's being erased. We are moving toward a two-tier society, those who own assets and those who provide services to asset owners. The visceral pain of this transition is the loss of the future promise. The promise was that if you worked hard and played by the rules, you would achieve a level of comfort.
Now the rules have changed, but no one told you. The curiosity gap is, where did the middle class go? They didn't move up, they moved into debt. They are the people working 2 jobs to keep the appearance of a middle-class life. They are the hidden poor. This psychological pressure to maintain a lifestyle that is no longer affordable is driving a mental health crisis. We are a nation of people pretending to be okay while we drown in the rising tide of costs. The shadow fact is that the median income in Canada can no longer afford the median home. When that link is broken, the social fabric begins to fray. You feel it in the anger at the grocery store, the road rage on the 401, and the quiet despair in the suburbs. The dream has become a haunt, a ghost of what used to be possible. Being house poor is the ultimate Canadian irony. You have achieved the dream of homeownership, but you have no life left to live in it. You are a prisoner of your own equity. You can't afford to travel, you can't afford to eat out, and you certainly can't afford to take a risk on a new career. The emotional pain is the gilded cage effect. You are surrounded by wealth you can't touch. The curiosity gap is, why don't people just sell? Because there is nowhere else to go. If you sell your house in the GTA, you have to buy another house in the GTA, and the transaction costs, real estate fees, land transfer taxes, eat your gains. You are stuck. This creates a stagnant economy where no one can afford to move for a better job or a better life. We are anchored to our mortgages. The shadow fact is that the Canadian economy is now just a series of interconnected housing bubbles. If the bubbles pop, the country goes with them. If they don't, the next generation is permanently dispossessed. It's a zero-sum game where the house always wins. And by the house, I mean the banks. You are just the caretaker of their asset, paying for the privilege of staying there. Education was supposed to be the great equalizer, but in Canada, it's become a debt trap. We have the most educated population in the world, yet our productivity is plummeting. The visceral pain of finishing a master's degree, only to realize that your starting salary won't cover the interest on your student loans and your rent, is a modern tragedy. We have created an education inflation, where a degree is the new high school diploma. It's the minimum requirement for a job that pays $50,000 a year, a salary that in most Canadian cities is now a poverty wage. The curiosity gap is, why are we overeducating for a low innovation economy? Because the system is designed to keep people in the debt work cycle for as long as possible. You spend your 20s getting in debt, your 30s and 40s trying to pay it off, and by the time you're debt-free, you're too tired to build real wealth. This is the shadow fact of the Canadian meritocracy. It's not about how much you know, it's about how much you owe. The degree isn't a ladder, it's a weight. And as the cost of living continues to rise, that weight is becoming unbearable for the youth of this country. The golden handcuffs of Canadian benefits are a psychological trap. We have employment insurance, parental leave, and various tax credits that make it feel safe to stay in a mediocre job. But this safety is an illusion that prevents true wealth creation. The emotional pain is the comfort trap. You are just comfortable enough not to leave, but not comfortable enough to thrive. You are tethered to a system that rewards staying put and punishes the bold. The curiosity gap is, why does Canada have so few global tech giants or massive startups compared to the US? Because the safety net acts as a drag on risk-taking. Why risk everything to start a business when the CRA will take half your profits and the cost of failure is so high? The shadow fact is that Canada is a country designed for the average. If you want to be exceptional, if you want to be truly wealthy, the system isn't built for you. It's built to keep the median person just happy enough not to revolt. But as the cost of living rises, just happy enough is turning into just barely surviving. The handcuffs are still golden, but the gold is starting to flake off, revealing the cold iron underneath. The brain drain to the United States is the ultimate indicator of the Canadian wealth problem. Every year, thousands of our most talented doctors, engineers, and tech workers head south. The visceral pain is the feeling of being left behind in a stagnant economy, while your peers in the US see their salaries double and their cost of living drop. The curiosity gap is, why don't we talk about this? Because it's an embarrassing admission that the Canadian dream is being outperformed.
The shadow fact is that the wage gap between Canada and the US is widening at an alarming rate. We are becoming a farm team for the American economy. We pay for the education and healthcare of our citizens only for them to give their most productive years to another country. This is a massive net loss of wealth for Canada. It leaves us with a shrinking tax base and a less innovative society. If you stay, you are effectively paying a loyalty tax, a lower standard of living in exchange for the comfort of the familiar. But for how much longer can loyalty pay the bills? The reality is that for many, moving to Canada was the first step, and leaving Canada is the second step to actually getting rich. There is a deep, unspoken tension in Canada between old money and new labor. If you bought a house in 1995, you are a genius. If you were born in 1995, you are a victim. This wealth gap is not based on merit, but on timing. The emotional pain of this generational betrayal is profound. It's the feeling of being locked out of the prosperity that your parents took for granted. The curiosity gap is, how does a society function when the young can no longer afford to live in the cities where they work? The answer is, it doesn't. It slowly decays. We are seeing the hollowing out of our urban centers. The people who make the city run, the teachers, the nurses, the baristas, are being pushed further and further to the margins. The shadow fact is that the Canadian economy is becoming a rentier economy. Wealth is generated not by creating value, but by owning things and charging others to use them. This is the antithesis of the dream. It's a return to a feudal structure where your birth date and your parents' assets are the primary determinants of your life's outcome. And that is a bitter pill for any hardworking Canadian to swallow. The quiet desperation of the Canadian suburbs is a psychological phenomenon. We have built thousands of miles of identical streets, filled with people who are working themselves to death to pay for homes they only spend 8 hours a night in, mostly asleep. The visceral pain is the isolation, the lack of community, the long commutes on the 401 or the Deerfoot, the feeling that you are just a cog in a giant debt-fueled machine. The curiosity gap is this what we really wanted? We traded the vibrant life of a community for a double-car garage and a mountain of debt. The shadow fact is that the suburban lifestyle is the most expensive way to live, both financially and ecologically. It's a drain on the city's resources and your personal time. You spend 10 hours a week in traffic, which is time you aren't building a business, spending with family, or investing in yourself. It's a slow leak of your most valuable asset, time. In Canada, we don't just pay with money, we pay with our lives. And for what? A lawn you have to mow on Sunday before starting the grind all over again on Monday? The dream has become a repetitive, high-cost loop. Let's talk about the big 5 banks. In most countries, banking is a service. In Canada, it's a tax. Between monthly account fees, low interest on savings, and high interest on loans, the Canadian banking system is designed to extract a service fee from every transaction in your life. The emotional pain is the feeling of being nickeled and dimed by institutions that report record profits every quarter. The curiosity gap is, why do we put up with it? Because the Big 5 are so deeply integrated into the Canadian identity and the stock market that we feel we have no choice. The shadow fact is that Canadian banks are some of the most profitable in the world, not because they are the most innovative, but because they have the most captive audience. Every time you tap your card, every time you pay your mortgage, every time you buy a mutual fund with a 2% MER, you are transferring your wealth to them. They are the true winners of the Canadian economy. They aren't just too big to fail, they are too big to challenge. And as long as they control the flow of capital, your path to wealth will always include a significant toll paid to the gatekeepers in glass towers. We've reached the shadow fact that ties it all together. The Canadian economy is not a traditional economy. It is a demographic Ponzi scheme. It requires a constant, massive influx of new people to pay for the services of the old, to keep the housing market from crashing, and to provide low-cost labor for the retail oligopolies. The visceral pain comes when you realize you are just a brick in this wall. If the immigration stops, the housing market collapses. If the housing market collapses, the banks fail. If the banks fail, the country ends. So the government has no choice but to keep the pressure on. They must keep the costs high and the supply low to protect the wealth of the asset-owning class. The curiosity gap is, what happens when the new people realize the deal is bad? That's what we're seeing now. The truth about moving to Canada is that the ladder has been pulled up. You are being invited to a party where you are expected to pay for the drinks, clean up the mess, and sleep on the floor. It's not a path to wealth. It's a path to sustaining someone else's wealth. Once you see the architecture of the trap, you can never unsee it. But what do you do with this information?
So, is it impossible to get rich in Canada? No, but the old way, the work hard, buy a house, save 10% way, is dead. To succeed in the new Canada, you have to be a financial renegade. You have to understand that the system is designed to keep you as a permanent consumer and a perpetual debtor. The final curiosity gap is, how do you break the cycle? It starts by rejecting the polite lie. It starts by looking at your finances with cold, hard logic, rather than the sentimentality of the Canadian dream. You need to diversify out of the Canadian dollar, look for opportunities that aren't tied to local real estate, and perhaps most importantly, stop measuring your success by the standards of a disappearing middle class. The truth is that Canada is a beautiful country with a broken economic engine. You can still enjoy the beauty, but don't rely on the engine to get you to your destination. You have to build your own. The question isn't whether Canada will make you rich. The question is, can you get rich to spite Canada? The answer is yes, but only if you stop playing their game and start playing yours. The first step, knowing the truth. And now you do. But there's one more shadow fact about the upcoming great transfer that we haven't even touched.